6.4 Review and Future Actions. So when giving feedback to an individual about their performance, many different things need to be taken into account. A professional needs to take into account the specific person who they are providing feedback on, as people react differently to criticism or evaluation of their performance. Some people become very defensive and in denial, whilst others may be more sensitive to the comments and could affect their confidence. Based on the individual, the professional must decide how to approach the way they give the feedback, being aware of firstly how critical they are of the individual's performance. Some will want to hear their weaknesses and won't mind hearing the weaknesses, as they'll view this in a kind of positive way, in a positive light, meaning that they know how to improve their performance, whilst others don't like criticism or to hear their weaknesses. For these kinds of people, the way they deliver the information, the way that someone delivers the information to them, needs to be taken into account. The professional should begin the discussion by speaking to the individual about the strength of their performance and what they did well, then move onto an area of improvement via constructive criticism. The professional should make sure that they're not highly critical, but are highlighting the area that needs to be worked on with the individual to make them feel better about it. They should finish the conversation referring back to another positive aspect of their performance so that it ends on a high and positive note. Those who tend to be more introverted may also suit this way of discussion better, as they may take criticism more to heart, and it may knock their confidence more than someone who's extrovert, who may be more defensive or not take the criticism to heart as much. For those who are often quite defensive or argumentative, it would be a good idea for the professional to have evidence and data supporting their points, so that the person can't argue or not accept that it's a weakness of theirs. Data and their stats is a good way of highlighting, for example, the amount of shots that they missed, as many people just think about the shots that they scored and don't remember how many they actually missed, and so people may think that they're amazing at shooting, but when you actually look at their success rate, they may not be as high as they think it is when they're looking at the stats. When providing the feedback, a professional also needs to think about their body language and tone of voice. Both verbal and non-verbal communication is highly important. A professional needs to make sure that they maintain eye contact with the individual and that they know the information and aren't completely reading off their notes. They also need to make sure that they listen to the individual, show that they're listening and engaging to the individual by nodding and making eye contact. The use of verbal language also needs to be taken into account. Often a specialist is very professional in their area and will know much technical language, but they need to make sure if they are talking to an individual who's got very limited technical language, that they use language that they're going to understand. Whereas if they're talking to someone who's very experienced in the area and will understand the language, they should use technical language, not basic language, to show off their knowledge and increase the individual's confidence that the professional knows what they're talking about. The player position that I'm going to be talking about and who I looked at and who I watched is a small forward. These players tend to be quick, lean, powerful, and an all-rounder in the game. It's a generic position, meaning they need to be able to do all the different kinds of basketball skills to a high standard, as their roles involves a range of different skills. It's highly versatile, so a player needs to be able to be very strong in both defence and attack, showing off skills such as box out and rebounds, accurate shooting, high powerful jumps, etc. It's also important that they have good cardiovascular endurance and therefore fitness, so that they can maintain their endurance for the whole game. Also, because they're involved in both attack and defence, good fitness is important, as they will constantly need to be running up and down court, helping the defence and also leading the attacks. They need to have a lot of power and speed when sprinting up and down the court, so that they can keep up with the opponents and break free of the opponents when on the attack. It's also important that players have power and strength, as this will help their running, explosive jumps, strong, accurate, powerful passes, and much more. When doing a box out and rebound, having powerful, strong legs will enable a person to jump higher into the air to retrieve the ball, and will also help a person act as a barrier, stopping the opposition from getting around them. These positions tend to have both size, speed, and strength, showing off their versatile nature. Having collected the data, there are many different other factors that need to be considered which could have affected an individual's performance and therefore the results that were obtained. The first factor includes if a person is being filmed or conscious that they are being observed and that their performance is being watched, it's likely to impact their performance and it's likely to change. This is because often when we feel we're being watched, people tend to overthink their technique or every decision they make. Some may feel very anxious about being filmed, while others strive off it. The reaction of being filmed or observed very much depends on the person, their personality, and how they respond to this kind of increased pressure. Many people feel that they are being judged, which will therefore increase their anxiety, which will affect their arousal levels, leading to over-arousal and therefore a decrease in performance for some people. The next factor which can influence performance includes the amount of sleep an individual gets per night. The amount of sleep an individual gets regularly, or the amount of sleep that they got the night before the data is being recorded. An individual who the night before has struggled sleeping and is extremely tired may perform much worse than usual due to them feeling greater amounts of fatigue than they used to. Lack of sleep lowers mood, decreases concentration levels and reaction times. Therefore, it's likely that a person who is lacking sleep will not perform to their full potential. While the opposite could occur when a person gets a much better night of sleep than they used to, as they may perform much better than usual, as it's found that good sleep improves a person's energy levels, their speed, reaction times and accuracy. This would therefore have an impact on the reliability of the results. On different days, people's results are likely to change due to these factors playing a part. Many of these factors can't be controlled, however, such as sleep in some cases. If someone's really trying to get to sleep and they just can't, it can be, you can't really change that so much. However, things such as diets and when a person goes to bed can be changed. But sleep, some just struggle with sleep more than others, so that's something you can't really change. The next factor is having a crowd watching the performance. The home crowd can sometimes be very beneficial for those who thrive off all the cheering and enjoy the attention, meaning that they perform at their best. This is social facilitation. Whilst for some, they may feel the increased pressure from the crowd in the home crowd and will therefore not perform as well as they could do. This is social inhibition. Being with an away crowd can have similar effects. Some people have enhanced performance because they feel more motivated and determined to beat the opposition, whilst for others their performance decreases as they may feel threatened by the away crowd or not comfortable due to being in a different environment. A person's personal issues also can have effect on performance. So personal issues, whether it's to do with lifestyle, issues to do with family, work, stress, anything like that, can have a massive effect on performance. Exams, for example, can put a massive strain on someone both mentally and physically. A person may be feeling very stressed, tired, and just drained, which will impact their performance in a negative way, as it's likely they'll be distracted and not focused on the task, and may also be a bit tense and physically tired. Other things such as family issues can also have a similar effect on a person. Arguments can make someone feel both physically, emotionally, and just drained, and can lead to someone struggling to concentrate and lacking energy. While someone who doesn't have much stress or family issues may be a bit more relaxed, less tense, and more able to perform at their best ability. A person's exercise levels or training the day before can also have a massive effect on the performance. If someone has had a very hard gym session the day before, they are likely to experience post-muscle soreness the next day, and their muscles will feel very sore and tight and stiff. This will therefore mean that their performance isn't as good as they used to because they're feeling very tired and sore. Whereas someone who hasn't got sore muscles or maybe went for a light swim the day before most likely won't be feeling as fatigued and sore as they won't have worked their muscles so hard or in the same way, and so won't have put so much strain on their muscles. And then finally, a person's diet can have a massive effect on performance. Eating a healthy and balanced diet is very important. This involves eating a wide variety of different foods in the right proportions. A healthy diet would involve eating fruit and veg, an adequate amount of protein for muscle growth and recovery, carbohydrates to provide the body with energy, and a range of other foods so the body can get the nutrients it needs. A person's diet in general or the day of the performance can have a massive impact on their performance. If a person has a very fatty meal, such as a burger and chips, right before they're about to perform, then it's likely that they're going to feel very sick, heavy, and sluggish and won't be able to perform as well. Whereas someone who maybe eats some carbohydrates such as pasta before their performance will have energy that is long lasting and will fuel them without overloading the stomach and making them feel sick. It's therefore very important that an individual gets the right amount of energy from the correct foods to fuel their sport. Wrong energy would be via consuming energy drinks and high sugar foods, as they will lead to a decrease in performance that results in energy crashes, feeling fatigued after eating them, and can also leave a person feeling very bloated and uncomfortable. It's also important that a person stays hydrated as well. I'm now going to be talking about the strengths and weaknesses I've identified from my individual from my other assignments, including notational analysis, technical model, and numerical model. From my notational analysis, I drew a schematic of Performer 1 and Performer 2. So Performer 1 was the weaker performer, which I'm going to be looking at, and then Performer 2 was the stronger performer. So the weaker performer, this is her schematic, and she covered a distance of 1,600 metres. Whilst the stronger performer, this is their schematic, and they've covered a distance of 2,200 metres. As you can see, the weaker performer covered a lot less distance and mainly ran up and down the kind of middle court, didn't really utilise the outside of the court, whilst the stronger performer, there was a lot more movement, utilised kind of the whole court opposed to just the middle up and down. I've also made these graphs from her results in the basketball game, and I've picked out some strengths and weaknesses from it. So from the graphs, I've picked out her main strength, which includes passing, her weaknesses, which includes 2-pointers, offensive and defensive rebounds, turnovers, and steals. This is a table here to show a brief summary of all the strengths and weaknesses from the notational analysis, technical model, and numerical model. So as I was talking about the notational analysis, so I said the strengths was her passing, and then these were all of her weaknesses. And from her schematic, I have noticed that she covers a lot less distance in comparison to others on her team and in comparison to the stronger player. And so I've interpreted from this that her aerobic fitness may be poor, which I'll talk about later. In terms of her weaknesses, one of her most predominant weaknesses was the turnovers she committed. The turnovers. She made 6 against her, with the mean being 2.5. This shows that this is a massive area of weakness, as she didn't make up for this many turnovers by steals, as she didn't do any steals either. So in other words, if she had done the same amount of steals and turnovers, it wouldn't be so bad as her team. She wouldn't have contributed less or more to the team if she'd have done the same amount of steals and turnovers. Whilst if she did more steals than turnovers, she would therefore be a great addition to the team, as she'd be taking the ball from the opposition and giving her own team the advantage, as they'd have the ball more. And then in terms of offensive and defensive rebounds, she didn't do any, and this is a weakness, as she wouldn't have gained possession for her team from the rebounds of a shot, meaning it's less likely for her team to have had as much possession of the ball. And then her 2-pointers was also an area for improvement or weakness, as she didn't score many, she didn't score any rather, and she missed 3. So in other words, she had 3 opportunities to score, which she didn't manage to, so this would be a weakness. Next is a technical model. So again, I've picked out her strengths and weaknesses. So in the technical model, so the preparation phase for her strengths, I said her peripheral vision and her positioning of the forearm. As we can see here, this is the preparation stage. So here, her peripheral vision is good. As you can see, both the defender and the person with the ball, and then here her forearm is going in the right position. So to start off with the preparation phase, her strengths were the peripheral vision and the position of her forearm. She has good peripheral vision and she can see both the ball and the player. She can anticipate whether the player will take a pass or a shot, which will then enable her to quickly react. Here she's correctly using her forearm to block the opponent from moving towards the ball, holding her opponent in place. Whilst the weakness in the preparation phase was that she had a weak stance. So here, a weak stance. She didn't have her knees bent enough or a wide enough base, meaning that she could easily be pushed away by her opponent and wouldn't be a very strong barrier. In the next phase, which is the execution phase, the strengths were the contact with the opponent and the strong stance. So here, contact with the opponent and a strong stance. So she made contact with the opponent so she would know where they were the whole time without needing to directly look at them. And she also had a strong stance with her knees bent and was acting as a barrier. And then her weaknesses in terms of the execution phase was no two-footed jump, and the timing to receive the ball was wrong, in the sense she didn't get into the air. So here she's catching the ball, we're about to catch the ball, and she's not left the ground yet. And her timing seems kind of wrong because she's not in the air yet. So her weakness was that she didn't do a two-footed jump to get the ball from the air. Her timing to receive the ball was wrong, meaning that she caught the ball very low and was still in contact with the ground, but she should have been in the air when making contact with the ball. Also, because she didn't do a two-footed jump, a defender would have got the ball before her in a game situation, as they would have jumped and retrieved the ball in the air, opposed to once the ball was nearly reaching the floor. And then finally, in the recovery stage, her strength was that she turned her head immediately to look for the pass. So here, so after catching the ball, she straight away turned around to look for a teammate to pass the ball to, which is really, really good. But then the weakness was firstly that she didn't jump, so she had no time to look for a player to pass the ball to while she was in the air, and also she did not protect the ball. So here, she didn't jump, and then she didn't have time in the air to look around and assess the situation to see who was on her team who was free to pass the ball to, and she didn't protect the ball very well. It's not close to her chest, and she's not got her elbows sticking out, meaning a defender could come in and steal the ball. And then finally, from the numerical model, I have noted that her main strengths were duration of phase, net impulse, velocity, and resultant force. So resultant force here, net impulse, duration of phase, and velocity were her strengths. So her resultant force was above the group mean, as was the net impulse and velocity. And then the duration of phase was not only above the group mean, but it was also above the strongest performers on the day's score. So this highlights that many aspects of her jump was very good, but the final outcome of the jump, of her height and time in seconds, maybe didn't reflect the scores well enough. So this is telling me that she needs to work more on making sure all these different factors kind of work together and all being effective to make her jump height better. And that her strengths are being correctly utilised to help her get into the air, and will therefore mean she can spend a longer time in the air. And then, while some areas to improve on include the power, time in air, jump height, and acceleration. So jump height, time in air, and then acceleration here, and then her power. So due to not getting enough power and acceleration, not getting enough power to be generated, this has a negative impact on her jump height and her time in air, which is lower than average. So I've picked on 3 areas of weakness that I want to work on with you. From notational analysis, it is working on your aerobic fitness. From the technical model, it's improving your two-footed jump. And then from the numerical model, it's working on power generation.